All right, let's take a look at the affective states of these two animals. So the first thing that I want to draw attention to is the fact that we have clearly a low light scenario. So that could be either early morning or it could be late in the evening, which, as quite a number of people suggested, there might be some influence from feeding times here, because that's often when people will feed, is early morning, early evening. And definitely either frustration around food, like empty stomachs, or kind of anticipation of food can change emotional states. So that's definitely a really good context to be looking out for, is sort of the light. In this particular case, these horses have already been fed, they've already been interacted with today, and so we will have a minimal influence of hunger on their behaviors. They had gone into this back area, and are now returning to the front. And so there isn't anything particularly about the environment that I would suggest that they are motivated by food or anything else of that regard. The next thing to do is to be looking at some other obvious differences or similarities between the two horses, because we do have two horses here. So we'll see they both stopped on this hill. And the other thing to look at is that they're kind of looking in different directions. So oftentimes the horses are afraid of something in particular. They're often going to be orienting towards it in some fashion. They might be looking towards it, they might be facing towards it, but they're going to have these repeated kind of eyes in the direction of the thing that's afraid, or they're going to be leaving from the direction of the thing that's afraid and then turning around and facing towards it. So you can generally get some obvious context that there is an item which is making them fearful. And in this case, we have the horse on the left is looking to the right, and the horse on the right is kind of looking down. And throughout this video, there isn't really an obvious point where they're both showing fear from, at least at this stage. So then, if we watch the black horse, this horse is a gelding. He starts with his head down, which could be something olfactory. It could be something like a displacement behavior. He could also be trying to look with his eyes. So if we've got funky conditions, like the ground is very steep, or the ground is very muddy, or there's something new on the ground, you can get a head oriented down that doesn't necessarily have an emotional context. So we have to be careful with that. And in this case, we have a very steep hill. And while it's hard to tell in this video, we do have very muddy ground. And so my suspicion is that that head down was him investigating the land before he actually takes a plunge to go into a movement. Okay, it's hard to get much information here. You can kind of get a little bit from the canter and the trot transition. It's not super erratic, it's fairly fluid, and that canter's pretty slow. Okay. But here, as he comes up the hill, I want you to really look at his neck profile, especially as he's kind of back against the backdrop here, and you can see it really, really well. If you look at the curve of his neck, it goes up and over. There's this very pronounced, relaxed shape to that neck. Okay, and even the underside of his neck has a little bit of a curve to it, but it's really obvious kind of here at the top. And if we compare this nice curving slope to a known context, because in this case we don't have a known context yet for the same horse. I'll pull up. This is from same horse, same direction, and similar light conditions. And you'll be able to see in this one the neck shape's quite different. Now, in this case, there were people across the way. They were shooting things with pellet guns. And so in this case, I have pretty clear evidence that this horse was in a negative affective state. But look at the difference in the neck shape here. It is almost straight. Even though the head elevation is fairly similar in this moment in time, we have a much straighter kind of profile to the neck. So we're already kind of getting some differences between this body language in a very clear context of a fearful event and the body language that we're seeing here. So I would say that for this horse, even here the head is actually a little bit lower. We at this time are probably more towards a positive affective state than we were in that other scenario. Doesn't mean he's happy or excited or anything like that. But it does suggest that we're in a different emotional state than another one. In this case, with a really relaxed body, I would say that at worst we're in neutral. And we might be starting to tend towards more of kind of a positive state. Now here we get a shift, so you can see most of his orientation was down the hill. Now he's shifting in this direction. Okay. Again, it's pretty muddy, so we kind of got a slow thing. And now his body language is starting to change a bit. The ears are going different directions. His body's starting to arc away a little bit. And we might actually be seeing a change in emotional state here. In this case, I'm the draw. And the last time I was standing in this spot was several weeks ago, and I had tossed some little apple bits out to them. So he may be coming around to see if there is some apple bits that might have in this location. That could be why his nose went down. That could also be something like a displacement behavior where they are feeling some conflict. So maybe he would like to go to the front like he would normally do, but he wants to also come this way to see if there's any apples. And so we get this bit of head dropping. It could also still be the mud. We've got that ground that kind of slopes down. And then here we see a little bit of a head toss, and he quickly changes direction. And what's important about this context is what happens right afterwards. You'll see that my camera pans immediately over to the other horse, which has just started running. And so I think the folks that have said that he has basically switched possibly into a negative affective state here are probably correct. And I think that this displacement behavior is coming about because he would like to stay and investigate. We have that kind of very erratic head toss, right? It's not very smooth. It's very jerky. And then this other horse comes down. This other horse can be, a pest. Anytime you're dealing with horse-horse interactions, they're going to have some interactions together that can change things. And he quickly that other horse has exited the area. And so my guess is that he did not want to remain in this scenario because he didn't want this other horse to be coming to interact with him in this space that's kind of cornered in the fences on slick ground. And so rather than staying and potentially getting something interesting from a person, he has opted to go ahead and leave. So yeah, I think we kind of start with a more positive state for him. And we remain in a fairly positive state throughout this, but we probably have switched into a negative state and a bit of frustration right about here. When this other horse comes up. Now we have horse number 2. So do we have something similar? Movements are quite a lot faster for this other horse, right? We're not seeing as much of a smooth flowing canter. But this horse also just has different conformation and is going a little faster, and so is not going to be looking the same as the other. But the next shape, also fairly similarly around, it's kind of hard to not as contrasty against the backdrop. See if I can pause it in a place where you can kind of get an idea of the softer slope to the neck here. And she is going much faster. And as someone pointed out, the tension in the body might show up when we have mud, just simply because it's really hard to go around some corners. Okay. And here she is trying not to slide into the other horse. You can see in her feet how hard it is for her to stay stable. You can see she goes flying off and almost tips there. Okay. But the key to her effective state here is how bouncy she gets real quickly. See how she kind of hops around. Rather than it being very jerky, it's a very, I would say, fluid hop from one to the other, and she's doing a lot of intentionally changing positions, which for this horse is a really common play sign. So this is a video from a few years ago of her playing with another equid, and you're going to see that her motion is very hoppy. She likes to switch positions. This is really clear and really fluid. She doesn't have anywhere else that she wants to be other than kind of playing. And so in this case, most of that energy is contained here in this spot. Okay. Whereas if we look at this moment in time, she does a couple of play hops and then she immediately turns, right, going the other direction that the other horse went. So she's got a draw that she needs to be that direction with the other horse. And you can see as she comes about, she has these really energetic, very heavy, like over-exaggerated head swings. And there you can really see the curvature to her neck and just how relaxed that body position is. So overall, I would say this horse was playing in a very positive, effective state on their way into the front, just to be done with the back. They've got higher energy levels at this time of day. And maybe a little bit at the end, we were switching towards some frustration, very mild amounts of frustration at brief periods of time, which kind of led to the head tossing, but not so such a level that we don't kind of switch right back into more of a positive affective state again. So overall, both horses in a positive affective state with a couple of moments of maybe switching over to some negative affective states where we have a bit of concern over what the other horse might be doing, the black horse, and then maybe a bit of frustration otherwise out of the more gray colored pinto horse. Let me know if you got it.